You pick up your phone to reply to a single message, and suddenly you're watching a video you don't even remember clicking. You sit down to study, but your thoughts drift toward conversations you haven't had yet. You open your laptop to work, and somehow your fingers type a familiar shortcut that leads straight to entertainment instead of progress. If this happens to you, it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It means you're human. We live in a world designed to fracture attention. Every app, every sound, every vibration is competing for the same limited resource, your focus. Your mind is constantly pulled outward, split into smaller and smaller pieces, until it feels like you're busy all day but accomplished nothing meaningful. Focus today leaks like water from a cracked container. What's interesting is that this scattered attention wasn't always a flaw. Thousands of years ago, our survival depended on it. Early humans needed to stay alert to every sound in the bushes, every movement in their peripheral vision. Missing a signal could mean death. Fragmented attention kept us alive. But the environment changed. The brain didn't. Now that same survival mechanism is triggered by notifications, headlines, and endless streams of content. The result isn't safety, it's exhaustion. Researchers at University of California found that after an interruption, it takes the average person 23 minutes to fully regain focus. 23 minutes. That's not just time lost. That's mental energy burned, momentum destroyed, motivation weakened. Think about how many times a day your attention is interrupted. One message, one tab, one quick check. Now multiply that by 23 minutes. This is why people feel overwhelmed even when their workload isn't extreme. It's not the amount of work that breaks us. It's the constant restarting. And this is exactly where Jake Morrison found himself. Jake was 16 years old when he realized something was deeply off. He wasn't unintelligent. He understood math. He liked physics. He enjoyed programming. But whenever he tried to sit down and do the work, his focus evaporated. He would open his textbook and feel an urge to check his phone. He'd start a video lecture and pause it to look up something unrelated. He'd tell himself, just 5 minutes, and lose half an hour. Jake had a dream, a serious one. He wanted to study software engineering at MIT, one of the most competitive universities in the world. The kind of place that doesn't accept potential, only proof. But Jake's grades didn't reflect his ambition. While other students steadily improved, Jake stayed stuck in the middle. Not failing, not excelling, just average. His friends didn't let him forget it. MIT? Come on, man. You can't even stay focused long enough to finish homework. They laughed. To them, it was harmless teasing. To Jake, it felt like confirmation of his worst fear, that he was wasting his own life. At home, the pressure was quieter but heavier. You're capable of more, his parents said. But you need to take this seriously. They weren't wrong. Jake knew that. That's what hurt the most. He didn't lack discipline. He lacked control over his attention. When Jake tried to study, his mind betrayed him. It jumped ahead into imagined futures. Graduation ceremonies, high-paying jobs, proving everyone wrong. The fantasy felt good. The work didn't, so the book stayed closed. The assignments stayed incomplete, and the dream stayed far away, until the day he failed another calculus test. That night, Jake stared at the ceiling, feeling something snap. Not anger, not sadness, clarity. For the first time, he admitted the truth to himself. Talent didn't matter if he couldn't focus. Intelligence didn't matter if his attention was always elsewhere. Something had to change. A few days later, while wandering through the school library, Jake stumbled upon a thin book tucked between thicker volumes. It wasn't flashy. No bold promises. No productivity hacks. Just a quiet title about a Japanese principle rooted in Zen philosophy. The idea was simple, almost insultingly simple. Do one thing, only one, with your entire attention. No multitasking, no background noise, no mental wandering, total presence. The concept was called Ichigyo-Zammai. First, Jake dismissed it. How could something so basic solve a problem that felt so overwhelming? But the more he read, the more uncomfortable he became. Because the book wasn't offering motivation. It was offering responsibility. It claimed that distraction isn't something that happens to us. It's something we allow. And focus isn't about forcing the mind. It's about removing everything else. Jake decided to try it. Not perfectly, not heroically, just once. He cleared his desk, put his phone in another room, opened his calculus book, and chose a single problem. One problem, nothing else. At first, his mind resisted. Thoughts pulled at him. Urges flared up. He wanted to check something, anything, but he stayed. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Something strange happened. The noise in his head softened. For the first time in months, Jake wasn't thinking about the future or replaying the past. He was just there, present. When he finished the problem, he felt a quiet satisfaction he hadn't felt in a long time. Not excitement, not pride, stability. That night, Jake slept better. And the next day, he did it again. If you've read this far, be honest with yourself for a moment. What is your biggest distraction right now? Your phone? Social media? Your thoughts? Write it in the comments. Jake didn't suddenly become a different person after that first focus study session. He still felt the pull of distraction. He still reached for his phone without thinking. His mind still tried to escape into imagined futures. The difference was subtle but powerful. Now he noticed it. Before, distraction controlled him invisibly. Now it announced itself, and that awareness changed everything. Most people believe multitasking is a skill, something productive people are good at. Answering messages while working, watching videos while studying, listening to music while writing. We've been taught that doing more at once means being efficient. But the brain doesn't work that way. Your brain cannot truly focus on two demanding tasks at the same time. What it does instead is switch rapidly between them. And every switch comes at a cost. That cost is called attention residue. When you move from one task to another, part of your attention stays behind, stuck on what you just left. Even if you think you've moved on, your brain hasn't fully caught up. That residue accumulates, making each task feel harder, slower, and more exhausting. This is why after a day of doing everything, you feel mentally drained but strangely unfulfilled. You weren't fully present for any of it. Jake began to see this pattern in his own life. When he studied with music playing, part of his attention followed the melody. When he kept his phone nearby, part of his mind waited for it to light up. When he tried to switch subjects quickly, his thoughts lagged behind. He wasn't bad at studying. He was bad at being present. Ichigyo-Zammai doesn't fight distraction directly. It removes the battlefield. The principle comes from Zen practice, where monks train themselves to give total attention to a single action: walking, eating, cleaning, breathing. Not as a productivity trick, but as a way of life. The idea is simple. When attention is whole, the mind settles. When attention is divided, the mind suffers. Jake decided to experiment further. He set a rule: one task, one block of time, no exceptions. No phone nearby, not face down, not silent, gone. No music with lyrics. No tabs open just in case. No jumping ahead. Just one clearly defined task. The first few days were uncomfortable. His mind rebelled, told him he was missing out, that he was being inefficient, that checking one message wouldn't hurt. He noticed how strong the urge was, Not because the message mattered, but because his brain craved novelty. Distraction wasn't about laziness. It was about stimulation. Every notification was a small hit of dopamine, a reward without effort, and his brain had learned to seek it constantly. But something interesting happened after a week. The urges didn't disappear, they weakened. Focus started to feel less like force and more like gravity. Once he started, it became easier to stay. His study sessions became shorter but deeper. 40 minutes of full attention accomplished more than 3 hours of fragmented effort ever had. And for the first time, Jake started finishing what he began. There's a moment everyone who practices deep focus experiences. A quiet moment where time seems to stretch or collapse, where the noise fades, where effort feels almost effortless. Psychologists call this a flow state. Zen practitioners call it presence. Ichigyo-Zammai trains the gateway to that state, not by adding more tools, but by subtracting everything unnecessary. Jake realized something that changed how he saw his past struggles. His problem was never discipline. It was environment. He had been trying to focus in conditions designed to break focus. Once he removed distractions, focus emerged naturally. This is uncomfortable to hear because it removes excuses. If your phone is in another room and you're still distracted, then the distraction isn't external anymore. It's internal, and that's harder to confront. Jake started applying Ichigyo-Zammai beyond studying. When he ate no screens. When he walked, no headphones. When he coded, no background browsing. Life slowed down, not in a boring way, in a grounded way. Moments felt fuller, tasks felt cleaner, even rest felt more restful. But the real test came weeks later, when he received the results of his next calculus exam. Not perfect, but better. Significantly better. For the first time, the improvement matched his effort. That night, Jake didn't celebrate loudly. He sat quietly, realizing something important. Focus wasn't something he needed to chase. It was something he needed to protect. Most people don't fail because they lack talent or intelligence. They fail because their attention is constantly being drained away, drop by drop, until there's nothing left to give. Ichigyo-Zammai doesn't promise instant success. Promises clarity, and clarity compounds. Let me ask you something honestly. When was the last time you did one thing? Just one. Without reaching for your phone, switching tabs, or letting your mind drift. Jake quickly realized something important. Knowing the principle was easy. Living it was not. The world didn't suddenly become quieter just because he decided to focus. Notifications still existed. Deadlines still stacked up. People still expected instant replies. Distraction didn't disappear, it waited. So Jake stopped asking, "How do I focus more?" and started asking a better question. How do I make distraction harder? This is where most people fail. They try to practice deep focus in a shallow environment. They rely on willpower while keeping every temptation within arm's reach. That's like trying to eat healthy with junk food on the table. Ichigyo-Zammai isn't about heroic self-control. It's about intelligent design. Jake began by restructuring his environment instead of blaming his mind. He created focus boundaries. When it was time to study, his phone didn't sit nearby. It didn't stay silent. It didn't stay face down. It left the room. Not because the phone was evil, but because attention is fragile. You don't test fragile things. You protect them. He also stopped mixing input with output. No studying with videos playing. No coding with social media open. No background noise designed to entertain. Silence felt uncomfortable at first. His thoughts got louder. Old anxieties surfaced. Boredom crept in. But boredom turned out to be a gate, not a wall. Once he stayed with it long enough, his mind settled. This is something ancient Zen practitioners understood long before smartphones existed. In Zen training, monks repeat simple tasks: sweeping, sitting, breathing with full attention, not to escape the mind, but to stabilize it. When attention stops scattering, the mind stops panicking. Jake adopted one rule that changed everything: define the finish line before you start. Instead of saying, "I'm going to study," he said, "I'm going to solve 5 calculus problems." Instead of, "I'll work on this project," he said, "I'll write the introduction." One task, one outcome. This removed the anxiety of infinity. The brain resists open-ended effort, cooperates with clarity. He also learned to separate focus time from reaction time. Most people mix the two. They try to concentrate while staying available to everyone. They answer messages mid-thought. They check notifications between sentences. Their attention never goes deep enough to be effective. Jake scheduled reaction time later. Messages could wait. Emails could wait. The world would not collapse. And it didn't. Something else shifted too: his self-image. Before, Jake saw himself as bad at focusing. Now, he saw focus as a skill he was actively training. That distinction matters, because identity shapes behavior. Every time he completed a focus session, even a short one, it reinforced a new belief: I am someone who finishes. That belief started spilling into other areas of life. Conversations became deeper because he listened instead of half listening. Rest became more satisfying because he wasn't half working. Even entertainment felt better because he wasn't consuming it while feeling guilty. Ichigyo-Zammai didn't make life narrower. It made it richer. Of course, there were setbacks. Some days his mind wandered constantly. Some sessions felt pointless. Some weeks felt stagnant. But progress wasn't linear, it was cumulative. What mattered was returning. Again and again, one task at a time. Jake learned a crucial truth most people never realize. Focus is not a mood. It's a practice. You don't wait to feel focused. You act focused and the feeling follows. By the end of the semester, Jake's grades had improved noticeably. Not magically, not overnight, but consistently. Teachers noticed. His parents noticed. Even his friends noticed. The jokes stopped. Not because Jake said anything, but because results speak louder than ambition. And yet, the most important change wasn't external. Jake felt calmer, less rushed, less scattered, less at war with his own mind. The world hadn't slowed down. He had. And in slowing down, he gained control. If you're listening to this and thinking, "That sounds nice, but my life is too busy," understand this. Busyness is exactly why Ichigyo-Zammai matters. When everything feels urgent, presence becomes a survival skill. You don't need hours of silence. You don't need a monastery. You don't need perfect discipline. You need one moment of full attention. Then another. Then another. Let me ask you something, and answer honestly. What is the one task you've been avoiding because it feels overwhelming? Write it in the comments. At some point, Jake stopped thinking about Ichigyo-Zammai as a technique. It stopped being something he did. It became something he lived. That shift didn't happen all at once. It happened quietly, almost invisibly, through small decisions repeated daily. One task chosen over 10 distractions. One moment of presence instead of automatic scrolling. One deliberate pause where there used to be reflex. The most surprising part wasn't how much more he got done. It was how different life felt. Before, Jake's days blurred together. He was always rushing, always behind, always mentally elsewhere. Now his days had shape. Clear beginnings, clear endings. Moments that felt complete instead of fragmented. When he studied, he studied. When he rested, he rested. When he talked to someone, he was there. This wholeness changed how people responded to him. Teachers noticed he asked better questions. Not more questions, better ones. Focused ones. Questions that showed he had actually wrestled with the material. Friends noticed something too. Jake was harder to interrupt. Not in an arrogant way, in a grounded way. When he said he was busy, he meant it. When he was present, he was fully there. Respect followed naturally. But the real transformation happened internally. Jake stopped living in constant anticipation of the future. Before, his mind was always racing ahead, imagining success, fearing failure, replaying conversations, rehearsing outcomes. That mental noise drained him. Ichigyo-Zammai anchored him in the now, not in a mystical sense, in a practical one. When you give full attention to what's in front of you, the future loses its grip. Anxiety weakens, regret fades. The mind no longer needs to escape because it's no longer uncomfortable where it is. Jake still had goals, big ones, but they stopped feeling heavy. Instead of obsessing over MIT, he focused on today's work. Instead of measuring himself against others, he measured himself against yesterday. Progress became tangible. Weeks passed, then months. One afternoon, Jake opened his email and saw something that made him sit still. An invitation, a summer academic program affiliated with MIT, selective, competitive, and well beyond what his past grades would have allowed. His hands didn't shake. His heart didn't race. He felt calm. Not because he expected success, but because he knew, regardless of the outcome, he had become someone capable of sustained effort. That's the hidden gift of deep focus. It gives you something no external achievement ever can. Self-trust. Jake accepted the invitation. The program was intense. Long hours, difficult material, high-performing peers. Exactly the environment that would have crushed his old habits. But this time, he didn't try to keep up with everyone. He did one thing at a time. While others jumped between tasks and panicked under pressure, Jake stayed grounded. He broke work into clear units. He protected his focus like something valuable, because now he knew it was. He didn't dominate the room. He endured it. And endurance beats brilliance when brilliance is unfocused. By the end of the program, Jake wasn't the smartest student there, but he was one of the most consistent. Consistency changes how people see you. More importantly, it changes how you see yourself. This is what Ichigyo-Zammai does when practiced long enough. It rewires identity. You stop being someone who tries and become someone who does. You stop consuming life and start participating in it. You stop escaping discomfort and learn to sit with it and move through it. Most people think focus is about getting ahead. It's not. It's about stopping the slow erosion of your life. Because distraction doesn't just steal productivity. It steals presence. It steals memory. It steals meaning. When your attention is divided, your life feels divided. Ichigyo-Zammai reunites it. Jake didn't become perfect. He didn't eliminate distraction forever. He still had moments of weakness. But now, distraction was the exception, not the default. And that changed his trajectory. Let me ask you something that might feel uncomfortable. If you continue living with the same level of distraction for the next 5 years, where will you be? Now ask yourself a better question. What could change if you learned to give full attention to the next small task in front of you? Write your thoughts in the comments. Jake never did find a moment when everything felt perfectly aligned. There was no sudden silence in the world. No magical day where distractions stopped appearing. No final victory where focus became effortless forever. What he found instead was something far more powerful. A choice. Every moment offered it. Not between success and failure, but between presence and escape. Before, Jake escaped without noticing. Into his phone, into his thoughts, into imagined futures that felt safer than the work in front of him. Now he noticed the moment of choice, and that awareness was everything. Ichigyo-Zammai taught him that focus isn't something you achieve once. It's something you return to again and again, like a compass pointing back to what matters. One task, one breath, one decision. Over time, those returns shaped his life. Years later, when Jake thought back on the turning point, it wasn't the invitation, the grades, or the recognition that stood out. It was a quiet afternoon at his desk. Phone in another room, one open book, one problem to solve. That was the moment his life stopped fragmenting. Most people wait for motivation to focus, but motivation is unreliable. Comes and goes like weather. Presence is different. Presence is a discipline. And discipline, when practiced gently and consistently, becomes freedom. This is what Zen monks understood long before productivity apps existed. By doing one thing with full attention, you reclaim your mind from endless pulling forces. You stop living reactively. You start living deliberately. Ichigyo-Zammai isn't about doing more. It's about doing less better. Less noise, less switching, less mental clutter. More depth, more clarity, more meaning. And here's the part most people miss. When you give your full attention to the present task, you're not just improving performance. You're training your nervous system to feel safe without stimulation. That's rare today. We've trained ourselves to feel uncomfortable with silence, boredom, stillness. We reach for distraction not because we need it, but because we've forgotten how to be with ourselves. Ichigyo-Zammai reverses that. Slowly, quietly, permanently. You don't need to change your entire life to start. You don't need to wake up earlier. You don't need better tools. You don't need more discipline. You need one moment of honesty. Right now, there is one task you could do with full attention. Not perfectly, not forever, just fully. Close the extra tabs. Move the phone away. Define the finish line. And stay. Your mind will resist. That's normal. Stay anyway. Every time you do, you strengthen a muscle most people never train. Tension. And attention, when cultivated, becomes a superpower. Not because it makes you special, but because it makes you present. And a present person sees clearly, chooses wisely, lives fully. Jake's story isn't exceptional. It's available to anyone willing to stop dividing their life into fragments and start giving it whole moments instead. One thing, one moment, fully lived. Before you go, answer this honestly in the comments. What is the one thing you will give your full attention to today? Not tomorrow, not someday, today. Because this moment, right now, is the only place your life actually happens.